want to take a minute to talk about reporting Business Central data within the Vicinity environment, more specifically Vicinity View and related reports. So this feature functionality I'm going to talk about is really applicable to those clients that are either considering migrating up to Business Central or adding Business Central into their environment. One of the challenges that exists in working in a publicly hosted environment, a domain like Business Central, where everybody is in the same environment, is your limit or your limitation to access to data. Unlike being on-premise, where you have a SQL Server on-site or maybe a private cloud where only you are in that environment, in those environments you can get access to the SQL Server rather easily. In a public cloud, as Business Central is designed, you don't have that direct access. And so one of the things that we've done in Vicinity is grant that access to your data and only your data at a more local, more accessible manner. And the way to do that is using what's referred to as a data warehouse. So it basically takes relevant data that you need to Business Central and bring it into the Vicinity database so that you can then access it a number of different ways. I'm going to show it accessing it via Vicinity View. Now, there are two different ways in which we can do this. Ultimately, it's the same thing where you're pulling data from that public cloud, your data from that public cloud, and putting it into a database. But there are two different ways that can be done. One is on a scheduled event. Let's say every morning at 3 a.m. it updates the relevant data, or an on-demand kind of model where when you go to do the query, we go out and grab that data at that time and bring it into the environment for you to report. There obviously are some speed and some network bandwidth issues associated with trying to bring all the data over on demand. So the scheduled event really works well for master file type data that doesn't change very often, maybe customers, vendors, maybe part numbers themselves. But then there's data that does change rather often, quantity on hand, maybe lots available, things like that. So there are good business cases and use cases for both a scheduled type of an update and an on-demand type of an update. What I'm just talking about has been around for a while. We introduced that probably a year or so ago to allow for this reporting and querying capability. But we did add a feature that I'm going to be talking about in a minute. But before I get to that, let me just demonstrate what I'm talking about on a scheduled and an on-demand type of model. I've actually created a few custom views here, basically where we're going and looking at, say, the Business Central part list. That is basically some relatively static data. I do understand that in the course of a day you could add an item that would not be showing up on this scheduled type update. But this actually gets you, if not all the way for some reports, most of the way for a lot of your reports, with very little burden on your network throughput or the performance in the system. So there are reasons to do it this way. And in a static list like this, it'll function just like hitting the database for, let's say, a list of formulas or a list of batches or things like that. It functions identically, and we're just populating the table so that you can see any of this data after the scheduled event occurs. Now, there are other scenarios where the quantity may need to be more current. Say maybe lots on hand in Business Central, that type of thing. What I'm showing you up in this area is scheduled event type data. So this data would be as good as the scheduled event, let's say 3 a.m. We do have the ability, however, to pull on demand. And in effect, what we're doing is going to the Business Central database and saying, give me all records that have changed since the last time I queried this. So now instead of pulling all the data over every time, you're just simply going and finding new customers, new vendors, new items, new lots, new sales orders, things like that. And that's actually part of the the reporting capability that we have. So when you run a report, for example, a component cost roll-up, what the system is doing is it's going and grabbing any new costs and things like that on demand. So tell me anything that's changed, and I'll incorporate those new values in my report. So when you're talking about reports, we have the ability to go on demand. Now, here's the new feature. One of the challenges that we ran into was when people would go and run a report, it was going and picking up new records for every type of data that was being brought over. So, for example, if you were having the system in our data warehouse give you sales orders and sales order lines, inventory quantities, as well as lot availability, customers, vendors, purchase order lines, etc. In previous releases, anytime you would go to do a one-time event, it would go and find all the new records of all of that type of data and bring it over when you were only really needing a small subset of data, maybe quantity on hand of inventory, or maybe available lots, or maybe the current cost of an item, things like that. So this release, we've actually added a new function within the report setup. So when I'm running, say, the component cost rollup, I can actually group types of data and have it refresh just that type of data. So in this case, I could say, I need you to go and pull over the inventory balances, which may include my costs as an example, so that everything is coming over as the most current data, but I'm only pulling over records that have changed since the last time I queried it. This is really helpful to speed up the process of getting the data ready for the report to be generated. And then once it's in the data warehouse, you can do anything you want. So in this case, it'll be in the data warehouse and we'll be running a crystal report, doing our component cost rollup as an example. But it would also be available for any of these type of views that you're running. It would update anything that changed since the last scheduled update. So it's really a very helpful way to keep your data up and refreshed. The other thing I want to point out is once you can see the data in Vicinity View, you now have all this data available to you for OData feeds. So you can actually now go from Excel through Vicinity View to get any type of Business Central data that you need. We've had this out for a while. We've already got the endpoints within Business Central taken care of. So what I mean by that is we can pull any data you want to from Business Central into our data warehouse. Probably you want to work with our support department to get that configured in your environment, but it's a pretty simple task on our part. And then you can create any views that you want to off of any of that data. So literally any data that you need to from Business Central can be represented within Vicinity View. As you're well aware, Vicinity View is only in a Vicinity environment. Business Central doesn't have such a thing, so it's a really nice way for us to be able to offer data up to users without having to go through a lot of report writing and or external applications to make that happen. Anyway, so the primary function that was added in this environment was in this release is the ability to limit the amount of data that automatically gets updated. It'll speed up the process and make your user experience much more efficient. We hope that helps. Please let us know if there's anything further we can do, and we look forward to helping you with any type of data retrieval and reporting that you might have. Thanks a lot, and have a great day.